Hi, everybody. My name is Shannon Bradley. As Sam mentioned, thanks everybody for joining and for having me here today. As Sam said, I am a member relations and commercial partnerships manager here at Merlin. I'm just going to speak with you quickly before handing it back over or before handing it over to Mark about the Merlin model of owning your own digital distribution. Historically, there have always been independents who wanted to work directly with retail partners. And as the streaming music consumption model emerged and the underlying deal terms became more complex, independents that wished to work directly with DSPs found that they couldn't achieve the same commercial terms that were on par with what was being offered to majors. And thus, in 2008, Merlin was born to solve that issue and empower independents to own their own digital future. So Merlin is the digital licensing partner for the global independent sector. Our membership consists of labels and distributors from around the world, with notable members including Beggars, Symphonic, Domino, Red Eye, Secretly, Mad Decent, Colonized Media, Sub Pop, Ninja Tune, along with some CIMA members like Secret City, as well as many others that I can't fit into one breath. Our membership represents tens of thousands of labels and repertoire from hundreds of thousands of artists and accounts for greater than 15% of the entire global music market. It's through Merlin's representation of this commercially significant basket of rights that we're able to negotiate the best available deal terms with DSPs and ensure that our members' music is properly valued in the market. So just a couple of benefits to having a Merlin membership. First of all, Merlin operates as a not-for-profit. It's completely free to join, and we only take a small administration fee of about 3% from revenues generated through our deals, or a discounted 1.5% for members of CIMA or any other WIN-approved trade association. Merlin has over 30 partnerships with digital music services from around the world, including Apple, Deezer, Spotify, and YouTube, partners in the social space like Facebook, TikTok, Snap, and Triller, and in key markets with services such as Tencent and NetEase in China, Boomplay in Nigeria, Geo7 in India, and UMA and Yandex in Russia. We also work on a non-exclusive basis. So we don't interfere if members' rights are committed elsewhere for select DSPs. Members can choose which deals to participate in based on their company's priorities, the rights that they have available, and their capacity to deliver. Additionally, members have full transparency of commercial terms before committing their rights, and we provide a better understanding of how they earn revenues from each DSP. Speaking of revenues, in terms of reporting and payments, members do receive direct raw usage reports from partners, ensuring that they're in control of their own data. And Merlin collects payments from DSPs and ensures members are paid out on the most favorable terms in the industry. And the prettier stuff, the marketing and promotion, we do have exclusive marketing opportunities, access to marketing initiatives and tools in beta, frequent webinars run by DSPs on promotional and marketing tools, CMS access and support, and our commercial partnerships team is on hand to provide general guidance and best practice support with all of the above. So there's a couple of things that we look for in terms of criteria for membership. One of them is your catalog. You must control a significant set of master rights that are free from commitment to any third-party deals with distributors or aggregators, for example. In terms of delivery, which you all will be hearing a lot about today, Merlin is not a distributor, and we're not a full solution for anyone's digital distribution needs, which means that Merlin does not deliver music, metadata, assets, or anything like that to digital partners. Members need to have a professional supply chain in place and have the capacity to oversee delivery of their content and meet the professional specifications of each digital music service. So we typically signpost prospective members to one of our trusted third-party delivery partners like Audio Salad or CI, Fuga, Revelator, etc. Some members with technical expertise and in delivering direct are also able to set up in-house delivery feeds with services as well. In terms of experience, members need to have the internal resources and experience to capably manage direct relationships with digital partners, run their own marketing campaigns without the support of a distributor to help develop digital strategy, ingest and process raw reports, and translate deeper sets of data into accessible analytics. And one other thing that we get asked quite a bit is when is the right time for someone or a company to join Merlin, to apply to be a member. And the right time is really different for every music company. And the last thing that Merlin wants to do is talk independents out of very good support that they receive from their distributors. We ask that prospective members think very carefully about what their digital business would look like without that support. The choice to work directly with digital partners isn't for everyone, but it is an option for independent entrepreneurs who have the resources resources and the desire to manage deliveries, marketing, and accounting, look into all of the raw data that's made available, keep up with the constant changing of formatting and new opportunities and developments at DSPs, compete for attention at DSPs without the support of a larger company that some distributors do provide, and understand that responsibilities are going to be falling to your team that ordinarily are covered by distributors like accounting and reporting and royalty work. In fact, most independently owned distributors are members of Merlin, and we're the first to say that our member distributors provide great value to their clients. Moreover, if you do opt for a Merlin member distributor to get your content to DSPs, you'll already be indirectly benefiting from the advantageous terms of our deals without the additional commitments of direct participation. Overall, this mini presentation is simply to educate independents about the options that are available to you and what you think you should, what you should think about if you're thinking about taking control of your own digital. There are tons of additional resources on our website, merlinnetwork.org, that's with 2 N's, including an overview of the benefits of having a Merlin membership and information on our application process. You can also follow us on social media at Merlin Network, or you can reach out to little old me. And my email, I'll pop it in the chat, but my email is shannon@merlinnetwork.org. And so with all of that said, thank you guys so much for listening to my little spiel. And I'm going to hand it over to Mark to talk about the good stuff, the metadata life.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Shannon. And thanks to Merlin and CIMA, and a special shout out to Sam for putting this all together. And all the sponsors, of course, including Factor, Ontario Create, SOCAN, StarMaker, I think, down there. I would also quickly like to acknowledge the land acknowledgement. I live here in Stockholm, Sweden, and we don't do such things. And I think it's something that's very special in Canada. Every music event I take part in, there's a land acknowledgement. And I think that's a very positive thing. So welcome. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about digital practices, best practices of metadata. And today is December 14th, and we are here yet again on Zoom. I'm going to talk a bit about my first, give you some background, then I'll give you the lay of the land for what we're going to discuss today, and then we'll get into introducing our guests, and we'll get into it. So my name is Marc Brown. I'm the founder and CEO of Byta, and as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm Canadian. I spent 18 years living in London, and now I live in Stockholm, Sweden. And so to give you my background, so you can understand where I'm coming from, I started in music in Halifax in the mid-90s when there was no such thing as digital. I worked at Sloan's Murder Records label, which was one of the first artist-run record labels in Canada, I believe. Then I moved to the UK, worked at Creation, Oasis, Super Furry Animals, Primal Scream, Teenage Fan Club. Then I worked at a label called Pop Tones, where I started doing radio promotion. Then I started 4, which is a radio promotion boutique company I ran in London for years. And then towards the tail end of that, I started Byta. And as I said, now I live in Stockholm, Sweden. So what is Byta? Byta is the platform that enables sending and receiving of digital audio in a clean, simple, and secure way, built for everyone working with music today. So what makes Byta unique? Well, we take advantage of audiophile's unique properties. So the first one is we read and write file metadata, which is what we're going to talk about in a bit. We offer on-the-fly file conversions from lossless to lossy, from one loss list to another losses, all that. Plus, we offer fast yet secure streaming, meaning you can't rip our links. So Byta is a tool, but we also want to offer the knowledge, because our mission statement is to provide artists and their teams with the tools, Byta, and the knowledge to move their careers forward. So Byta is a tool for sending and receiving digital audio, but we deliver the knowledge through our education nonprofit, which is called How We Listen. And this started as a blog interview series about 2 years ago, where we interview all different people from all over the world every week about how they find, listen, and experience new music. So what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to do a little bit of background on metadata at a super high level. Then I'm going to talk about what I know the best, which is file formats and metadata, and maybe some stuff that you all don't know or forget or get confused by. Then I'm going to introduce our guests, Kim Temple and Brad McCary. And then Brad's going to talk about master metadata, and then Kim's going to talk about publishing metadata. Then we're going to talk together. Then we've had a load of questions have come in, and we're going to talk about those. And I'm going to ask for more questions. So there'll be more than enough opportunities to get any information you need. Also to highlight, we'll send you the slides for this talk, so there's no need to be sitting there furiously making notes. You can just listen along. There'll be a link to watch again, listen again, all that kind of stuff. So just enjoy, and then we can follow up later if you need anything more. And please come tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. So background is, we met this guy over, it was sort of early in the year, this guy named Sean. He runs he's an electronic music writer, and he writes this great Substack called First Floor. And he wrote these 3 articles for us about his frustrations around sharing digital audio. And everybody does it. If you're a writer, you work in a magazine, you're a record label, a publisher, anything. Everybody's sending and receiving digital audio all the time. And Jamie, who works with me, who lives in the UK, he's going to throw the links in the chat. And so this guy, Sean Ronaldo, he wrote 3 articles, one on metadata, one on sharing music, and one on storing digital audio. And from that, we decided to get together and write the first ever white paper on music sharing. So on sending and receiving digital audio files and streams. And this was research with someone from McGill University, and it was released just last week. So Jamie again is going to throw a link in the chat. But reason it's relevant today to what we're discussing is this quote here, and this comes directly from it. Frustrations regarding metadata tend to rile up more emotional responses than nearly every other issue. And Sean, who authored the paper, is specifically talking about file metadata. But again, this is a big, what I guess you would call a hot button issue. Everybody's got an opinion on this, and it's super frustrating. So again, this might sound obvious to everybody, but I was talking to someone yesterday, and I said to them, hey, what is metadata? And I think we all know what it is, but it's also very hard to articulate. So there was this article from The Verge. I don't know if we have the link from a couple of years ago that I thought was really good. And this explains it. Metadata most commonly refers to song credits you see on services like Spotify, Apple Music, but also includes all the underlying information tied to a released song or an album. And so that's completely true, but it also means the information that lives in your audio files, because you're sending and receiving audio files with file metadata in them. And so this is what I wanted to highlight here. As you can see, that there are 2 really types of metadata, the way I see it. And this is sort of helpful for our discussion today. And one is file metadata. So that's artist, album, track information. We'll get into more detail when we talk to Kim about publishing. But the reason you want to be worried about file metadata is that you're trying to generate attention or income. So for example, you haven't even released a record, it's not on streaming services, but you're sending that audio, that music around privately to people because you're looking to get press, or you're looking to book tours. People need to hear audio well up front of release in a lot of cases, or you're looking for syncs. So you're trying to get your music placed in syncs and you're trying to generate income. So the way I see that, and the best way to explain it is file metadata is helping people who are receiving this music understand what they're receiving. They want to know what they're listening to. Blank files mean people don't know what they're listening to. So music and information is delivered to specific context. But then on the other side is what most people consider to be metadata, and the things that get talked about probably the most. And this is this master recording and publishing information. So the audio recording and the writer compositions, all that stuff. And why is this metadata important? Well, of course, it's about getting paid, but it's to make music and information searchable. So if you're an artist or a manager or you're running a label, you have all these tracks on these streaming platforms and there's poor or no metadata, that means that people can't find your music. So whereas file metadata is important because you're sharing audio to certain people, streaming metadata is really important to make sure that people can find, probably the public generally, can find and listen to the music and therefore get both you as rights holders and artists paid. So that's the distinction I like to make. And we can debate that later if anybody has any questions. So from our How We Listen interviews, I just wanted to give you a couple highlights of what people talk about. And so Phil, he works at a sync company in the UK, and he's talking exactly what I just said. Sometimes music supervisors are looking for a track that will be released to coincide with the commencement date of their production many months ahead, right? So we go back to that file metadata. Record isn't even out yet. You're sending audio to these people because you're looking to get syncs, you're looking to build profile, you're looking to get paid. But Yiling from Chartmetric in the States, she talks about things in a different way. She's talking about algorithms on streaming services and how they recommend music, and recommendations are partly done based on metadata. So what I listen to, the metadata associated with those artists is mixed with the metadata that other, excuse me, other artists have, and that's how it surfaces recommendations. So again, super important that your metadata is right. So now I'm going to talk quickly about what I know, and that's file metadata. So correct metadata essential. You see that on the right, that's the way iTunes used to look, and that's where most people used to edit file metadata. And so again, two types, right? Streaming services and embedded file metadata. But the key that a lot of people miss, and the thing I want to highlight is there are two different types of file formats, two different groups, your lossless file formats and your lossy formats. So uncompressed and compressed. So you can see WAV, AIFF, FLAC, and ALAC are all lossless file formats. There's a bit more detail in there, but we can skip over that now. And then formats like AEC and MP3 are lossy, as in they're compressed a bit, right? So those are the two you want to think about. But what is super, super important, and I notice this when I talk at schools, and I also notice when I talk with people who have been in music for ages, that a lot of people really don't understand the difference between the way WAVs hold metadata and the way all those other file formats, AIFF, FLAC, ALAC, AAC, and MP3, they're all done via ID3. And this will become important when we talk about pitching to sync. Basically, WAV files don't hold metadata in the same way. So it's super confusing. A lot of the time people think they're writing their WAV information to a WAV file, and they're actually not. So when you have your information in iTunes, when you used to do it 5 years ago, typing all your info in a WAV files, it doesn't get written to the files. And that's because WAVs use a different format for writing that information. And that is the key thing you need to remember about file formats. And if anybody wants to email me or get in touch, I can explain in more detail. But this is another key reason why you need to be thinking about this kind of stuff. And this is Clotilde. She did a How We Listen interview a couple of years ago. And she says, I'm not a fan of download inks and emails because I get files that are numbered 0992.mp3. And then they don't have any information when she puts it in iTunes. So if someone's trying to sync your track and they like the song, but they don't have any information, they can't remember who sent it to them, you're going to be out of luck. So it's super important to think about making sure your tracks are properly tagged. And so now that I've done my little part, I want to introduce the two other speakers today, Brad and Kim, and we're going to discuss master recording and publishing metadata, and a couple areas we're going to talk about: master recordings, publishing, but also additional tags that are useful to sync. So if you two would like to make yourself visible to the world. Hello.
I don't know about that, but hi.
Yeah.
How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
So let's see if I should.
I had a question for you, Mark.
You've got a question already.
I have a question. Because you said when you're putting metadata into like a WAV version of a song on iTunes, it's not actually writing to the WAV file. It's just staying in iTunes. If you're
Correct.
writing it through, let's say, Microsoft Windows, and you're going into the file properties and putting it in there, is that writing it to the WAV file?
That's a good question because I I don't use PCs.
Okay.
So you need that is a good question. But like you need to use something like say Audacity or Metadactics, because generally when you send WAV files around, there's nothing in them ever. But the worst problem is when you bounce something out of a mastering studio and it's got some name in the title, and then you don't know, and it goes all the way down, and then it gets played on the radio somewhere and it says mastered by so and so. They read it out on air because they pulled all the information out of the track. No,
Right.
but it's you laugh, but it's a real story.
No, I know, I hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. So now,
yeah.
Go on. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I'm a publisher at a record label. And so the metadata that I need for each song is a little bit different from what the label requires for their label copy. And it's very frustrating, you're right, to get mastered tracks delivered, WAV files, and wondering what metadata has the engineer attached, and then what metadata is the label going to attach, and what metadata are we going to attach as the publisher pitching for sync, as you mentioned, and trying to collect royalty revenue off of those tracks.
And that's exactly the thing, that when you send a master to a label, it's generally WAV file, and they don't pay attention to any of that. But by the time it makes it to you, Kim, as we'll discuss in a bit, it could have 40, 50 different tags in it. And those tags are not possible in a WAV file. And so this is something else to highlight, that the way it starts at the start isn't the way it ends up at the end. Right. And I think, because I know all the file metadata stuff, and that's why I'm looking forward to listening to you two, because I get super confused as to where you should even keep all this information, because you can't keep it in the file. And so, and then things change over time, et cetera, et cetera. So do you two want to introduce yourselves, and then we can talk a bit about those, go step by step, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I might need that slide back up just to make sure we cover everything. But
oh, yeah,
I'm Brad
sure.
Macri. I started a company called Royalty Gnomes a couple of years ago in order to help small labels and publishers deal with royalty registration and collection. And of course, metadata, a huge part of that. So that's where I'm bringing in some expertise from a number of years in the industry. Kim?
And I'm Kim Temple. As I mentioned, I'm the publisher at Six Shooter Records, but I'm also a dedicated publisher at High Priestess Publishing. And I wear many hats. I'm also senior manager at Music Publishers Canada. So I'm approaching all of this from the publishing point of view, as Marc mentioned.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Brad, should I get your slides up and we can talk about some of the stuff that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, for sure.
And then, let's see, there we go. So let's see here, let me just pull that up.
Yep, that's the one. So yeah, what we were gonna do is talk about things that you already know really at a high level, because you already know them, and then we'll dig in a little bit deeper on the stuff that you may not know about. The first thing obviously is the artwork, and that does show up on MP3s, but I don't think artwork is stored on WAV files at all. That's
correct. Very correct. Yes.
Yeah. So artwork is one of those things that obviously, like, especially if you're sending to somebody for consideration, you want that artwork to be representative of the product, or of your band, your artist, what have you, especially if you're sending it ahead of release. You may not have the artwork ready, but to have something in there that's a good representation of what you are will also help it stand out. If somebody's looking at a basket of files or a folder full of files, that album artwork will be the icon for what they're what they're looking for. Artist album title we covered. That's pretty basic. That goes back to Grace Note CD database days, where I worked at CMRA in the lyrics department, and that's what we used for every song matching exercise, was artist album track. That's what we had. And what you still had in the database in those days was whoever made a mix CD had put their own mix CD into the Grace Note CD database. So somebody else would buy a store-bought CD, put it in their CD drive, and all of a sudden, iTunes or Winamp would pull in the metadata for some other random mix CD that closely matched those track timings. So I'm glad we're in a much more detailed area of data in this day and age, but in those days it was the Wild West. The next thing that you may already know about is featured or co-main artists. The difference there being whether it shows up in brackets as part of the, on streaming services, shows up in brackets as part of the track name if it's featured, or it shows up with a comma beside the other main artist. And so those are two fields that you can choose to populate to make sure that your release also shows up on the profiles of your co-main artists and your featured performers. You can share the exposure that way and make sure that your releases are getting as much attention as they possibly can on services. Label is important.
Can I ask
yeah.
you one question though? Like, so the featured versus co-main artist, you've mentioned two ways of doing it. Does it, like, this is the kind of stuff I worry about. Like, does it matter which way you do it? Does it have an effect one way or the other?
Yes, that's I was saying one way is where it shows up one way and the other way is where it shows up the other way. So featured, when you put somebody in as a featured artist, it shows up as part of the track title in brackets. So it's like,
Yeah.
I Love You, the Sky is Blue, and then in brackets, featuring Marc Brown.
Yeah.
Right? But
Yeah.
the artist field is populated with, Kim Temple. Right? So now but then if you guys were co-main artists, you collaborated on it, and you're in essence sharing, the headlining spot on this track, then it would be Marc Brown, comma, Kim Temple, dash, I Love You, the Sky is Blue. And there would be nothing in brackets at the end of the track title. So that's the difference of what you would see choosing one method over the other.
Yeah, and it depends on the relationship between the artists. So it should
Absolutely.
be approved in advance. Yeah.
Yeah, and from a label perspective, it depends on like who's taking the bulk of the royalties. Like who is the contracted artist that is on the label that is releasing it, or are you splitting it 50-50? And sometimes that's the difference. So if Six Shooter and True North Records put out a record together, who did we have? We had Buffy Sainte-Marie and Tanya Tagaq, right?
Yeah.
That was the one that we did together, right? Yeah. So in that case, because it's 50% going to one label and 50% going to the other label, you might put them as co-main artists, as opposed to somebody who was hired for a session, or is lending their bit, their bars to the track. Then they would be featured, as opposed to sharing in the royalty pool.
And a good difference there, I would say, is A Tribe Called Red, or now called Hallucination, featuring Tanya Tagaq.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a different story from the first Tanya Tagaq and Buffy Sainte-Marie that Brad was talking about.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are different.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Label doesn't really show up, and I think that label is a very important field, obviously, to have in there, because everybody wants to know who the master recording owner is, or who is responsible for releasing it. But the label doesn't actually show up on services. What shows up instead, where you see label information, is the P&C line, which we'll talk about on the next slide. But the P&C line is actually what shows up where people think the label information is. The label field itself in metadata sheets is kind of just an internal field. It doesn't display anywhere, but it certainly helps. When I worked at distributor IDLA, it certainly helped to filter through the millions and millions of rows of data in batches going by label name. And anywhere where the label wasn't populated in it was sometimes a headache to try and track down, hey, who are we distributing this track on behalf of again? because we may not recognize the artist name. We're a distributor, right? We may not recognize the artist name, but we certainly recognize the label because that's who our client is. So label information, definitely very important. Songwriters, which Kim will touch on a little bit more, but songwriter information at the master level doesn't need to include like splits. It just basically needs to have the names of everybody who has some piece of the songwriting on the track. And then ISRCs and UPCs. I know there were some questions in the registrations about ISRCs and UPCs, so maybe we want to spend a few minutes like roundtable on that. But ISRCs, basically you have a prefix, and then this after the year, so you have your prefix, then you have a year, and then you have the number sequentially of the release in that year. So like 210001 is the first release of 2021, but your prefix determines who's assigning this or who's releasing this. And that can either be given to you from a platform like CD Baby or TuneCore or DistroKid, or you can register your own. And in Canada, you would register your own prefix through Connect Music Licensing. They are dishing those out. And I think it's free. You just have to fill out the form and show that you're going to be releasing, X number of songs over a certain period of time. So that's on the ISRC. On the UPC front, it's a little bit more expensive. You do have to buy your own UPC prefix, and I don't know that it's worth it for most indies. But a label such as 6-Shooter would have their own prefix, and every UPC that they generate would start with the same 6 numbers. Whereas if you go with DistroKid and you get them to assign your UPC number, then it's all going to start with the DistroKid first 6 digits. But either way, UPC is very important. The combination of those two also very important, because you could have the same ISRC for the master recording on different products. So one could be the original album that the song was on, and the second could be a greatest hits compilation. And therefore you would have the same recording code, the same song, but they would have a different UPC depending on which product it was. And there may be different people sharing the royalties based on which product it came from. So very important to have both, and to know that, I always use a concatenate with an underscore, which is super technical, but anyway, in order to differentiate songs from the same song from different products. So it's always ISRC underscore UPC.
And just on like to highlight, an ISRC is what you call a unique identifier. And this is a pretty like heavily debated issue, because people think that ISRCs are, there's ISRC, IWRC. What is it? IRPI? Is that the third? And
IPI is the person, the
Yes.
party. ISWC is the work code, International Standard Work Code, and ISRC is International Standard Recording Code.
And if I understand correctly, everybody's saying ours is better than the other ones. Is the way I read it, because I think you mentioned it on the next slide, right? You mentioned another one.
Possibly. There's also grid. There's a grid code, which I have never used, but a lot of forms allow you to put in a grid code. So like there's lots of unique identifiers that people have tried to come up with in order to solve the problems of just mass data and misrepresented data out there in the black box of past, royalties waiting to be claimed. And then there are one of the faults of ISRCs too, is that you can very easily duplicate an ISRC by mistake. It happens all the time. And so we had an instance once where I noticed that the wrong album artwork was coming in for a song on a completely different album by a completely different artist. And when I looked into the metadata that we had delivered, we had duplicated an ISRC on a single and duplicated it on an album from a completely different artist. And so now out there in the world, the metadata for these two products is now all jumbled, because now like the stream count is being shared, for example, between this single by artist A and this track on an album by artist B, but they're sharing the same stream count because they're sharing the same ISRC. So it's super easy to accidentally duplicate an ISRC if you don't have meticulous ISRC assigning practices.
Well, because I think, can you hold, let's go to the next slide. And can you hold on to that idea? Because after we talk to Kim in detail, I sort of want to talk about what people can do to sort of have the best practices possible to organize this kind of stuff. So let me just go to the next slide. So this is things you might not know about.
Right. So yes, title versions is something that comes up a lot in electronic music, but certainly can be in pop music as well. It's the idea that like you have a remix of something or a particular person's remix of it, or a particular artist or producer's remix of it, and therefore you could have the same title. XLD, for example, is the title of the song, and then you've got like Kudos Low-Key remix and Tir Kahoot remix and Hallucination remix, and each of those are actually put in the title version box of your metadata, not in the track title box. And that's the way that Apple likes their standard, and it works on all other services. But a lot of people will make the mistake of putting the title version in the title of the song, and it should actually be in the title version. And therefore, it appears slightly differently based on which service you're looking at. Like on Tidal, it appears after an M dash, whereas on Spotify, it appears in brackets. So that title version box is displayed differently depending on which service you go to.
Oh my God. It's
right?
So complicated.
Then you've got your producers and performers. Now, historically, this hasn't been necessary, but in the world of neighboring rights, when you get into sound exchange and what they claim, or resound here in Canada and what they claim, producers and performers are necessary for everybody who participated in the production and recording of the record of the song, because they're going to go in and try and claim their performers' rights, their neighboring rights, through sound exchange for like doing the hand claps on the chorus of Hey Jude or whatever it is, right? So everybody gets a piece. And I know if Julia Train were here, she'd be talking about signing up with MRock as a performer. Even if all you did was do hand claps on a song, there are royalties there for you. And the way that they track those royalties is because whoever released the song populated those performers boxes on the metadata when they delivered it. That's the easiest way for them, for the performance rights, to get to your musicians. So those boxes are all in there. And like I mentioned down later, it says classical music specifics. That's part of that performers piece, where you can get as specific as you want with classical music, down to like first cello was Marc Brown, second violin was Kim Temple, right? And therefore all of those performers can claim their performance rights on those classical recordings. It can get very, very specific. So that kind of takes care of 2 bullet points. Lyrics, of course, now you can go with third-party lyric services like Music's Match and get your lyrics into Spotify, but traditionally with Apple, you needed to put your lyrics in the metadata in the delivery of the file for Apple and iTunes to be able to display your lyrics. You had to supply them. There was no third-party supplier of lyrics to Apple. So that is a something to make sure you have when you're setting up your song in DistroKid or wherever.
And that's, sorry to interrupt, but that's like, is that newer to be wanting to be adding the lyrics in? Is that something that's changed recently?
I think you've always wanted to put them in, but I definitely think there is more incentive to do it now, where lyrics are being displayed, but also lyrics are being used to discover music in a way that they weren't before. With the introduction of Google Home and Alexa and stuff like that, people can say, hey Alexa, I hope I didn't set everybody's Alexas off just now. Hey Alexa, play me the song that goes do 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 do. And it will look through the lyrics of millions and millions and millions of songs and find you a match and play you that song. So lyrics are also being used for discovery, especially if you have a song on the radio or you have a song where people are going to recognize or maybe just catch the hook and they want to hear that song later, but they only remember 5 words. Now you can search by lyrics using voice commands, which that's the new thing for lyrics that wasn't around before, to answer your question. So there's also artist name translations. So let's say, Masari. Masari was somebody who was a good example of this, where he has for the North African region, forget what the acronym is for that, but the North African and Middle East region, he spells his name in Arabic. So that there is room for artist name translations in the metadata, so that when you deliver, if you do have a name that you go by in another language, but it's anglicized for an American market or a North American market, you can have it appear depending on the user preferences of on the service. So whoever's listening to your music, if they have their language set to Arabic, they would see Masari's name written in Arabic instead of written in anglicized characters. So that's available. And then P&C lines, as we talked about before, that's what actually shows up where people think the label data shows up. What they are is actually showing who first released the music and in what year. So the year is a very important part of P&C lines, and it should always be the copyright holder first and then any licensees second. So it should always be written in that order. So for example, Marc Brown puts out a record on Six Shooter Records, but Marc Brown licensed it to Six Shooter Records instead of Six Shooter owning it. It would be copyright P or copyright C 2021, Marc Brown under exclusive license to Six Shooter Records. And so it should always be the copyright holder first, who is the first maker, and then any licensees after. And that's the format for P&C lines. So that's what they are, what they mean, and how to use them.
I'm so prolific. I didn't realize.
You're the first name I can see when I'm looking for an example.
No,
so I just pull it right off the board. Yeah.
Okay. So and just a quick question: is all this information what you used to call label copy?
Absolutely.
Is that essentially what it was? And now it's just become more detailed, and it's got a new, is that the best way to explain it? Like what used to be the label copy is now master metadata. Is that?
Yeah, except that the metadata even asks for more. Like lyrics were never part of a label copy sheet before, right? Like, and performers.
That would be a publishing thing. Is that right, Kim? Like the traditional lyrics would have been under.
Traditionally, yeah. I mean, but now our digital supervisor is asking for lyrics too. So now there's a lot more crossover between the departments, and so they will reach out and ask for, both of our departments will need the lyrics and the songwriter information and the publishing information. I just think that the DSPs are requiring more and more information, which is great. I mean, it's good ultimately for everyone involved.
And some of that is being requested by organizations like Sound Exchange, like MRock, like ActraRax. Like they are going in and saying, hey, we have this claim from this drummer that played on all these session recordings. Like, how do we verify this? And they're asking the services to pay out, right? So now the services want to be able to verify more easily that, yeah, that drummer played on that Rolling Stones tune, right? And so they're requiring us, they're requiring us to deliver more and more information about the recordings because they're getting asked for it.
Well, because I, just before we go to Kim's slides, I actually talked to someone, the founder of Viva, who does the metadata company in Nashville, and I had no idea what they do. They actually do that. They call around and talk to everybody, and for the major labels, and pull in all that information, everybody who played on everything. Like, it's insane. And it's super, super, super complex. So yeah, very interesting. Okay, Kim, sorry. Let's get into publishing metadata. So do you want to tell us about this stuff, which looks pretty obvious to me?
Yeah, I mean, this is the stuff people typically already know they should add. Going back to that, to your first slide, Mark, that sort of showed like the traditional iTunes, when you hit Control I, when you've highlighted a song title, you will see these fields, song title, artist, album, year. I like to get really specific with year and have the release date. But if you don't know your release date, you could always go to like maybe Apple, you know, you can search your own album and you'll see when you click on that album what the actual date of the release was. I agree with Brad, master owner is not really a metadata field that they ask for. So we tend to either put our label for on the publishing side, I'll add the label information under something called grouping. I'll say 6-Shooter Records or High Priestess if it's a High Priestess song. And then I will also add the master ownership information in the notes of the digital platform we're using. For the sync department, you know, we're using something called Disco, which a lot of music supervisors use. But most of these platforms, I'm sure Byta has that too. Byta, did I say it right?
Byta, yeah.
Byta, like Beatles.
Thank you. And songwriter and publisher information, most people know that that's what they need to include. And if you don't have a publisher, if you haven't assigned publishing rights to anybody, you as a songwriter are automatically your own publisher. So Mark, will stick with you as the artist. You know, as soon as you write a song, you are automatically you know, let's go with SOCAN. When you register your song, 50% of that copyright is owned by you as a songwriter, and then 50% is your publishing. And so if you don't have a publisher, the song will be registered 100% under your name. But when they are paying out royalties, it's understood that 50% of that goes to the songwriter and 50% goes to the publisher. So some people, if you're just a self-published artist, it will be your name, Marc Brown, 100%. If you are Marc Brown as the songwriter, you'll have that as the songwriter credit. If Marc Brown Songs is the publisher, you'll have that as the publishing credit. So sometimes people don't catch whether they should be putting in publishing information. If it's just you, yourself, your own name, I would say go ahead and put that as the publisher as well, just to avoid any confusion. And then genre, most people hopefully throw in some kind of hint about what genre their music is for searchability, as Brad mentioned. But let's go to the stuff people might not know to add. And this is all really important to get paid your royalties. The performing rights organizations really need all of this information. And if they don't have it, or if it's incomplete, it's going to go into unclaimed works. So ISRC, we will often be asked for if we are, for example, syncing a song for placement. Generally speaking, the production company or the licensee will ask for the ISRC number just to make sure that they're matching it to the exact song that they were looking for or that we're licensing to them. Songwriter PRO, the performing rights organization, I mentioned is really important, because if you're a SOCAN, Marc Brown, let's just say you're a SOCAN member, or, you know, maybe he's the most prolific songwriter today anyway. Maybe you're ASCAP or BMI, or maybe you're registered over there in Sweden through STIM. You know, that is the performing rights organization that will be collecting all your royalties around the world. So that's important when people are when they're submitting this, like a cue sheet, a music cue sheet saying, this is the song that we licensed in this TV show. They need to know the PRO that the money is going to flow through, that will get back to you in terms of worldwide royalties. Songwriter IPI is your interested party identifier. So that is a unique number that every songwriter has. Once you are registered with a PRO, let's just go with SOCAN because we're in Canada here, you will automatically be designated an IPI number. So, Marc Brown, there may be 10 Marc Browns in Canada who are songwriters, and maybe your middle name is Marc Philippe Brown. I don't know. You always want to throw in maybe your middle name or something to help distinguish yourself from all the other Marc Browns, but your IPI number, regardless, is the number that will be assigned to you by your PRO, and it will follow you everywhere you go to avoid.
And so it's that's an international thing, like ISRC for the songwriters themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
And so
publishers.
any PRO would issue an IPI.
Yeah,
any PRO I join. Okay.
And same publishing companies, we have our own. So High Priestess Publishing has its own IPI number as well.
Okay.
But if you want to get really nitty gritty, this is the metadata that publishers need. If you're an artist, self-published, self-releasing, maybe just put in your own. Don't worry, you don't have to get too deep into the nitty gritty. But if you do have co-writers, make sure you know what their names, their songwriter names are. If Brad is P. Diddy or whatever, if he has a DJ name, I don't know, you can't just put that into your metadata. I'd actually have to know his name is Brad Macri and he is a SOCAN member, and get his IPI number. So for all of your co-writers, it's really important to have their actual songwriter names, not just their artist names. And if you can get their IPI numbers, that's always helpful, or your publisher will find that for you. And then share splits on the publishing side. I agree with Brad on the label side. It's just songwriter names. That's all they need to know. But on the publishing side, we need to know those share splits. So we need to know if, Mark has 50%, Brad has 25%, and I have 25%. We have to put that into our metadata so that we know who's getting paid what when we collect for sync placements. And
there's actually a great app called Jammer that allows you to put your splits in and register them from the songwriting session. So everybody plugs in that, connects on this app and puts in their shares, and then it's all agreed upon in the room at the time the song is written. Anyway, just a side note.
Very cool. I mean, as a publisher, that makes me so happy because nobody ever wants to talk about share splits in the room because it kills the vibe, man.
Right.
But
and then there's Nashville rules where just if you're in the room, you get an equal share, right?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. But I get how it can be complicated if someone's providing if someone's providing the beat and then one person's writing the bridge and one person's writing the top line or the melody, or just lyrics. You look at your average Beyonce song and you'll see so many songwriters on each song, and everybody's got whatever percentage. Some people have 2.5%, some people have 5%, some people, sometimes they're using samples that they have to credit those writers from. So make sure you know your share splits. If a PRO gets a song registration that does not add up to 100%, it will go into unclaimed, it'll go into suspension because everybody has to agree on what the share splits are. So if there's anything incomplete or somebody doesn't agree with their share split, which is why I love what Brad just said, anytime you do a co-write, the next day, email back and forth and just be like, hey guys, this is what we talked about. We're going to do even splits. Does everyone agree? Just an email or a text or any kind of communication saying, yes, these are their share splits. We're all in agreement. That's handy to have. Make sure you put that in your metadata. For clearance type, so this is something that on the label side, you wouldn't have this in your metadata, but very important on the publishing and sync side. When we are pitching to music supervisors, we want them to know which rights we can clear and what we can license. So if it's only the master side, the master recording on the label side, or if it's publishing only on the High Priestess side, or if we can license both. If we are the label and the publisher, it's called a one-stop clearance, and music supervisors love that because it's only one person they have to go to.
One piece of paper.
Yeah, one license, and we can roll it in together. So otherwise
we do that on the master side. What I also like to do in that same box is if I know who it is, like it's Universal Music Publishing because it's a cover song, I'll put in publishing controlled by Universal Music Publishing, so that the supervisor knows when they're listening to it, right, I know who my contact is at Universal, I can clear this, no
Exactly.
problem. It might make them make a decision easier.
As much information as you can provide makes your sync placement clearance so much more appealing to music supervisors. I agree with Brad. Why not just eliminate that step? Know who the publisher, if you're not the publisher, or if one of your co-writers has a publisher, make sure you include that information, because music supervisors have contacts all over. They know all the labels, they know all the publishers. They might look at it and be like, awesome, okay, William Prince published, 6shooter has the master, Cobalt is the publisher, great. I have my contact at Cobalt, this is going to be easy to clear, no problem. Territory is something that, we would include if we have sub-publishers who handle different territories. So if I can only clear for Canada, I'm going to put that in there. And then I will also put who can clear for the world, excluding Canada. So that's something to consider. It's a little more complex. If you're just starting out, you won't really need to worry about that too much, but a label and a publisher do have to worry about that.
I was going to say, I missed territory on my slide, but territory is important for like what country was it first released in or first made in? It's called the country of first fixation. And that then allows for, especially for neighboring rights, allows them to make sure that the money gets back to the territory in which it was first, released and created, and to the right performers that would have been in the studio in that country.
Totally. Lyrics, again, so important in the sync world. On the publishing side, not only are royalties paid for lyrics, but like you said, music supervisors will grab your songs and throw them into their own database on their own laptops. And when they are searching for music, especially in advertising, but in so many different contexts, there may be like, we need a song about coming home, or a song about sunshine, and that's how they're going to search their own database. So having your lyrics in there is so important, and even tagging, this would be separate from tagging. So lyrics, put in all the full lyrics in the lyrics tab, but then we even add in the notes keywords, and that's a tag that we'll pull out themes of the song, or a lyric that comes up all the time that we know is sort of like a buzz sync word that comes up a lot in briefs, and then also tagging with BPM, mood, instrumentation. Is there an instrumental available? If you don't have an instrumental available, forget about pitching for sync, because they always want to have an instrumental as well. So any tags you can provide when it comes to the world of pitching for creative sync placements is great to have. It's just so important. Music supervisors will love you if you include all of this information. And then of course, the most important one that a lot of people neglect to include is your name, your contact information, because they might file that song away for, a couple of years, but they might be like, I like this song, I want to put it in my database, but it's not right for this particular instance. But when they're doing their search 2 years later and they're like, I loved this song, I remember getting this song, who sent that to me again? No idea where to go to clear it. And like you already said, Mark and Brad, they'll just move on. They'll move on to another song, and that's a lost opportunity. So really important to have your contact information there.
Okay, cool. Now let's see. So this is, if everybody could just memorize this, maybe, so I can take the slides down, because like what I want to do is talk about like how on earth are you supposed to collect all this, and how are you supposed to hold it? Because I think, that it seems to me that if we look at even just looking at this last slide, that is a ton of different information. And yeah, so I wanted to talk about, because not every manager or label or artist has the time or the expertise to be thinking about this on a full-time basis. So And then on the right hand side, I talk about, you know, on the file side. But let me close this out so we can talk about it. But that's the big thing for me. It's that, how do you two suggest that people start to collate this information? Because when I look at that kind of stuff, I think I'm never going to remember all that.
Yeah.
But I guess the key to just try to remember to collect everything at the start.
I see you, Kim.
Excel, there you go. Yeah.
I was going to say, I was
G
just about
sheet.
to say, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, spreadsheets, use them, get to know them, love them, you know, they're your best friend, especially when you're starting out. You know, if you are your own team as an artist, or you're a manager who is trying to get an artist's metadata under control, just go back to square one. Start with a very simple spreadsheet with all of those fields and columns, and start copying and pasting all that information in. Anyone who's, you know, if a label picks you up, if a publisher picks you up, they will love you forever, because that is the information they are going to ask you for anyway. When you sign a deal, they're going to be like, hey, send me all your metadata of all your back catalog. So if you don't have that in order, it's not very attractive for them to, you know, to go in and have to clean that all up for you.
Yeah, KD, I think Katie Ann there also asked earlier a same thing about a sample template, and I was going to touch on that. Any platform that you're going to distribute your music through will probably have a downloadable template right on the upload page, because it's way easier to upload a whole album when you just give them a spreadsheet with all the track level information and it just auto populates. So they should all have one. Also, if you go to register with Sound Exchange or Resound or Connect, they all have a template you can download before you do it. MRock as well. They all have a template that is downloadable from their public website, so that you can get your information in one place and then submit it to them by just uploading one spreadsheet instead of filling in every box for every track over and over again. It's much easier for them. It's much easier for you in the long run. So Excel really is the beginning and end of all of it. You can use other things like Disco to catalog everything and to plug everything in, and then you can do an export out of Disco of your complete metadata. And then you'll have a spreadsheet with all the fields filled out. So you can use software to do that. But if you're just starting out and you have a small catalog, like a couple of albums, maybe a single or two, just start typing in the headers that you think you need and start filling them out. And as you go to register with more places, you can add the columns that are missing from their template to your template and start filling those in as well. A master metadata sheet, one worksheet that has every possible line item for every possible song, is really the key to unlocking all of these royalty streams and everything else.
And Brad, it shouldn't be scary, right? Like, I know it's not everybody's dream to spend the holidays sitting around on their computer looking at a spreadsheet, but I mean,
populating a spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's not, you know, I think there's one thing that we would like to impart to everyone in the audience is, once you get the ball rolling, it's really not that difficult. You know, this is really important stuff. Like, this is what's going to make you revenue down the road. So you really need to take care of it. And once you get the ball rolling, you get your first EP or your first album going, you know, get that information in, then it should just become like second nature to enter that information every time you write a song.
But one other question though, like, not all the platforms are the same. Is that not correct? Like, when you submit music to Apple, and because Brad, you sort of touched on that, and that's something I'm starting to learn. Like, just because you mentioned all these fields doesn't mean you're going to have to, they're all going to be in the same format, right? And the same, am I correct in that all these,
not everybody uses every field,
but they want it in their own little way. And because I think that's the other thing, they
take some license with how they display the information, but like all the fields are pretty standard, but some display all of the information and some don't.
I mean, that's what's great about working in a spreadsheet to start, is you can just remove all the fields that Apple doesn't want to see, remove all the fields that, you know, depending on who you're submitting to, only give them what they're requiring, you know, but it's a simple copy and paste at that point.
So like there was, looking through all these questions, there were a couple, I thought this was quite interesting, like advice about reaching out to publishers. And did I hear you say, Kim, when we were chatting last week, that and just now, that it's very unattractive if artists come along and they don't have all this organized? Is that like, because someone mentions, oh, like what kind of online presence do people need to have for, you know, to attract publishers? But I'm getting the impression that it's about making good music, but also being organized. As boring as that sounds. What do you think about that?
It helps. It definitely helps. I mean, I think if a publisher wants to sign someone, they're going to sign them. They're not going to be like, oh, you don't have a spreadsheet, forget it, you know. But you know, they're different size publishers. So there's some people who will only sign you if you have, like, you know, 30 million streams. And there's some publishers who are looking for emerging artists. I think there are, you know, small publishers, medium-sized publishers, and then the majors. And so, you know, I like it. I can only speak from my personal experience. I like to engage with talented people who are, you know, authentic artists, but also who I can have a conversation with about, you know, are you a serious player? Are you hoping to grow this? You're not a hobbyist. You want to make a living doing this. You want to quit your job at Starbucks or whatever and dedicate yourself full time to this. Can I talk to you about the business side as well? And do you understand your own metadata? Do you know how to get it under control? Or do you at least have a manager who I can deal with and we can get this all sorted out?
So, and I like, is it also like a willingness to learn? Because I think, you know, say I see people in the chat when we do a monthly event. A lot of people talk about how they don't know stuff and it's intimidating that they don't know. And I'm assuming you're not saying if you don't know anything, because you know what it's like. It's like, how do I get a publisher? I need a publisher to help me because I don't know. And
in some cases, that's exactly what the publisher steps in to do, is to take this highly successful artist who has no idea about how to organize the paperwork, and they organize the paperwork, and that's their percentage is paying for the legwork to do that, right?
Yeah,
but
I mean,
that's usually if there's a big hit.
Yeah, we can look at their royalty rep. We can just say, like, show us the books. What are you getting in terms of royalties? And we can tell right away if there's royalty revenue missing. We know something's wrong with your metadata. And so Brad's right, you know, it is going to be a cleanup situation. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to
It keeps me employed anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Like, I have a few clients where that's exactly what they came to me for, is like, I know I have neighboring rights money out there. My song's been on radio in the UK, but how do I get it? Well, do you have your metadata? In DistroKid. Okay, export that and let's start building a proper spreadsheet for you. So that's one of the tenets of my company.
Okay, cool. I'm still looking through these questions. There was a I want to ask about like lyric submissions, and someone's asked about TikTok and Instagram. And like, can we just talk about from a sort of platform side, like, are these, you know, what's going on? Because everybody talks about TikTok all day long, but how is TikTok pushing the boundaries of what people can search for and what they can add? And why? Because can you search for things via lyrics on TikTok?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
Plus, it's only 15 seconds or some, like, you can do up to 3 minutes now, but when TikTok started, it was 15 seconds or less. So there isn't time for lyrics. No, TikTok, the big thing that TikTok is doing differently from the other services is that TikTok doesn't pay you per stream. TikTok pays you per video created. So with TikTok, it really is, if you have a TikTok strategy, your strategy has to be going viral, because you have to create a trend that people want to create another video using the same audio in order for you to really see any blip on the radar. We have a song, we just did an Easter campaign on TikTok, and we have over 2 million views of videos using our song, but we only have 163 videos using the song. So we only get paid 163 times 4/10 of a cent, even though we have over 2 million views. So that's where TikTok is like,
Wow.
is
I did not know that. I did not know. That's fascinating.
yeah. So it's part of the race to the bottom of the value chain. I don't know if I want to be negative like that on this webinar, but
Well,
it's
you
part of the
know,
race to the bottom of the value chain. Is now we're getting paid less and less and
yeah,
less.
I hear what you're saying, Brad. And to be honest, TikTok has been really interesting in the publishing space because it's brought new life to old catalog. So, you know, publishers, sync trends have moved so much towards, okay, we only want a song pre-release. If we can break a song, if you can get it to us 3 months before it's about to be released and we can put it in a give it a sync placement, you know, we just want brand new, what's happening now, hot songs of the summer coming up, you know. But, you know, what about all this amazing back catalog that publishers and artists have? And I know Mother had a really good breakthrough with like an older song on TikTok, and it's breathed new life into their touring careers. And, you know, it's just, it's been an amazing platform for, you know, Fleetwood Mac and people discovering older songs, and ABBA, I think, too, right? So
And in a lot of those cases too, the publisher went to TikTok and made sure that it was all set. It wasn't just random discovery. Like the publisher is like, we have this back catalog, how can we push it? And they come up with a way to do it. Because like if you search for music on TikTok, you have to know what you're looking for, or there's a number of suggestions and they're all based on charts or like, what mood am I feeling? What this and that. Well, you have to be in with somebody at TikTok in order to be on those lists, on those recommended lists. And so for indies like Kim and myself, like it's very hard to be discovered on TikTok as a music file. So nothing about metadata is going to help you get more discovered on TikTok. In that particular instance, it's all about who you know.
Kim, can I come back to that question you just mentioned about syncs wanting to break, music supervisors wanting to break tracks? Is that a new trend? Is that something that's happened recently over the last couple of years?
I imagine it's always been that way to a certain extent, but it really does feel like now it's really taken hold. Like people just want brand new songs. You know, we do still place back catalog, but for very specific types of uses. I feel like, especially in, well, it depends. Ads, you know, they like familiar songs that everybody already knows. So there are some back catalog. There's potential there, but I think also what they're looking for is new covers of known songs. So artists doing a new, you know, anyway. You know, I do feel like it is a new trend. I feel like people want to know already what's the song of the summer going to be, and do you have it in your catalog, and can you pitch it to me, and can I break it, you know, with a release of a new streaming show, or in the end credits of a big movie, or, you know, even in an ad or a game.
Because another thing I notice when I do talks is that a lot of people, especially people who are newer to being either self-managed or just putting out their first few releases, is that the whole idea of timelines. And I always thought traditionally sync, it's like, oh, well, the timeline is pretty loose. It can be afterwards, you know, things can pop up years later. And so what you're saying is like, no, there's no free ride. You've got to be on things super early, as everybody should be.
Yeah, I mean, I see self-releasing artists just throwing songs out there into the
Yeah.
universe, and like no real game plan, no strategy, you know, wondering, thinking to themselves, like, what do I need a label for? I'm going to own 100% of everything myself. And 100% of nothing is still nothing. I mean, the whole point of having, in my opinion anyway, I can only speak for the label I work at, is, you know, you sign a record deal and you have a whole marketing team working on your releases for you, strategizing, making sure that, you know, you're getting maximum exposure for your songs, as opposed to just sort of tossing them out into the universe and hoping somebody will listen. I mean, the whole market is so oversaturated, especially during COVID. I just find it's like nonstop new releases and content and this and that, you know, everybody's vying for your attention. So if you don't know how to strategize as a self-releasing artist, you've got to get somebody on board to coach you and train you to, you know, have a successful 1-year campaign with your album.
Yeah, no, I can't believe it that even Sync is months ahead of release. Like that's yeah.
Yeah,
So
we do Christmas in July in the Sync
Yeah.
world.
Yeah,
Christmas
well, you
happens in
just
July,
mentioned the Easter. So I'm like, wait, what do you mean? So maybe you're planning already for next Easter.
Well, yeah, we're
That
going to
way-
do the same song.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to keep building year
asking-
after year to try and
That thing I've
associate
been-
that song with Easter. Yeah.
I'm on Easter 2025. What are you talking about?
What are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
Okay, well, so this has gone, as usual, has gone longer than one would anticipate. So I just wanted to ask if anybody has any final questions.
One thing that was
We did-
asked that
Go
I
for it.
answered privately through chat, but I should probably just address it publicly, is somebody asked, as a Canadian artist, do I need to have Sound Exchange? And the answer is like, how big are your revenues? Because Resound will collect from Sound Exchange on your behalf if you give them a global mandate to do so. But if the money coming from that territory, or coming from GEMA, or coming from PPL, or coming from like any specific territory, if there's a large payout coming from that territory and the amount that Resound is going to take to pass it through to you is significant enough that it's worth your time to go and register in that territory specifically, then that's when you do it. So you don't need Sound Exchange as an indie right away, but if you're getting a lot of satellite radio play, and you know that satellite radio play royalties go through Sound Exchange to get to Resound, then go and register with Sound Exchange directly and save that 9% or whatever the pass-through percentage is.
So would it be fair to say that ultimately the key is to start focusing early on getting opportunities, getting organized, and then when it comes to all these details about collecting, because I appreciate that question is very good. It's that, but that's maybe in the second phase. That first you need to get some money coming in, and you need to make sure that you're getting all the money you should have coming in, no matter how big or small it is, and then look to not make it more complicated, but get more into the detail in certain territories. Is that a fair way of explaining it?
Yeah, exactly right.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, that was great. That was super awesome. I learned a ton. That sync thing is mind blowing. That's my key takeaway today.
Mackenzie also asked about public domain. Kim, do you want to take the question on public domain?
Okay.
What is the question?
What happens with public domain works? I'm releasing a version of Deck the Halls with my act, This Mad Desire. It includes people from OK Go, etc. on the track. So how would you like on the master side, I can talk about it very, very briefly, which is like you would put the people performing from OK Go in your performers tags. Or if they are okay with you saying featuring OK Go, then that's going to get you a ton of exposure on the services by putting that in the featured box. Or, you know, you could co-main performer with them if you want. So on the master side, that's how you treat the OK Go part. On the public domain side, it's your recording.
Yep. So
So
I
you
would
still get all
say-
the sales and streaming. On the
yeah,
publishing side,
on the publishing side, register that song with SOCAN if you're, or ASCAP or whatever you're a member of, and call it public domain or a traditional song, whatever it is. And arranged by is how you register that. Arranged by you yourself or whoever helped you arrange it. That's how you register that on the publishing side.
right? Yeah, and I think it pays out 50% of what a full copyright would
It's
pay out, right?
25.
25%? Okay, yeah, on the
25,
publishing side, it pays out 25% for an arrangement credit of a public domain song.